Today we are getting to the bottom of digital SAT or ACT.
One of the misconceptions is that certain colleges prefer one test over the other.
Welcome to the Paved Blueprint, the official podcast of Paved by American Heritage School. Today we are here with Sara Kohn, an executive director of test preparation, to talk about one of, a very big decision that families have to make, and that is which test is right for my child. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much for having me.
This used to be a very simple choice, but now the SAT being digital, maybe a little bit more anxiety in the family because of it.
One of the big misconceptions, for example, is that the ACT is significantly easier than the SAT, and it's just not true. And there used to be, honestly, more similarity between the two tests. A couple years ago, the SAT went digital, and when it went digital, it also went adaptive. So adaptive testing is a type of testing where they're going to base the questions that come next on the second module based on how a student performs on the first module. So there's a little bit more strategy involved in how students take the test and perform. But when they did that, they also lessened the amount of time that students have to sit. And so that can be a benefit. The ACT, on the other hand, is a more straightforward test. The passages are longer, the reading passages. I know a lot of students struggle with reading those longer passages, but it's not adaptive, and that has its pros and its cons as well. The ACT recently went through a transformation, not as dramatic, I would say, as the SAT did, but there's definitely a lot of differences between the two tests.
I am sure there are a ton of misconceptions out there for families. Can you help alleviate some of those?
Sure. One of the misconceptions is that certain colleges prefer one test over the other, and that students really need to be fantastic at both tests in order to be competitive. The truth is that there is no college out there that prefers the SAT over the ACT or the ACT over the SAT. There's actually a lot of conversion charts that exist that colleges have access to that shows that one score of a 34, for example, on the ACT can correlate to about a 1,500 on the SAT. So they don't need both of those test scores to compare like students. So as long as you have any test score, colleges will definitely accept it.
And what about all those test optional schools out there?
No, so test optional is a policy where some schools would tell students they didn't have to submit a test score in order to apply. This came about mostly during the pandemic when there wasn't as much access to these testing locations because of COVID and all of that. So what happened over time is they actually did studies on these students who they were admitting into their school through other criteria based on GPAs and extracurriculars. And what they actually found is that the single best predictor of success in college is truly that standardized test score, the SAT or the ACT. So even colleges that originally transitioned to test optional are now actually transitioning back. A lot of the Ivies, for example, they now are requiring test scores from all their students. And I think one of the problems is that even schools that currently are test optional, and a student might have their heart set on that particular university, in a couple months from now, they can switch their policy, and if you're not prepared for these tests, now you don't have a score to submit and you have to basically completely rework your college plans. So some of the best advice that I heard at a conference once was that taking the test, the SAT or the ACT, should never be optional. Whether or not you choose to submit those scores, maybe.
So let's break it down for the families. We know that there is format, there's timing. Let's really break it down to help them in their decision-making process.
Okay, so the way that the SAT is structured, you're going to have 4 modules. You're going to have 2 verbal, which will consist of reading questions and writing questions, and then you'll have 2 math modules. And again, it's adaptive, so the SAT is going to look at the first module to decide how difficult that second module is going to be. The reading passages are actually a single paragraph now, followed by a single question. This is a big change from how it's been in the past and how the ACT presents the reading. The core concepts in terms of main idea, and then in the grammar section, punctuation, all of that is the same across both tests. But the ACT is going to focus on longer passages. They even in their grammar teach it and test it in the longer passage format. So that is a big difference. Now, because the ACT just went through that transition, there is a science section, which has been the big sort of change between, or the difference between the two, SAT and ACT. And the science section has been a really key contributor to whether or not students felt that it was the right test for them. Now that section is actually optional. So it isn't as much of a factor as it used to be, but students really do need to check with their colleges, because even though it's optional to take, some colleges are still going to require it. It's definitely something to be considered.
Great feedback. You actually just taught me something about the science, as somebody just asked me this weekend, oh, isn't the ACT for my more of a science brainchild? So thank you so much, because that's new information I can now take back with me. So help me, because I really wish I had this interview before my children who are already in college. I mean, we just have to know, how do I know? What is the easy answer? How do I know which one's right for my child?
Well, believe it or not, there actually is a really easy solution to this, and that is to take a full-length practice test for both. The concordance scales that equate the different scores from both tests are readily available all over the place online. A student can take a free practice test on the Blue Book app by College Board. They'll see what their score is. They can go into the ACT website, take one of those tests, and really, ultimately, once you look at the scores, statistics tell us that most students do actually score comparably on both. There are very few students who are really going to excel at one and not at the other. And then it's going to come down to, what does the student prefer? The student is the one sitting there for the 2+ hours taking this test and going through practice material and learning these skills. So it's important that the student feels like they're taking the test that's right for them, rather than the one that parents or schools try to push on them. It's about, where do they feel most confident, because I think that confidence is what's really going to translate into those better scores.
Test prep, test prep, test prep. Obviously, if you're going to sign up for, you're going to take a Saturday out of your family's life to go and take some of these tests a couple times a year in my junior and senior years, when does preparation start? Is it ever too late? Is it ever too early? What are things that we can do to best prepare for these tests that are given?
It's a great question. So my advice is always that there is some type of preparation that can be done very early on, and starting in really middle school and building these skills up through high school. That is the ideal scenario. Now, most students should have some kind of preparation plan in place, ideally sophomore year. If not that, then absolutely by the beginning of junior year, when most students are going to be taking these tests. It is absolutely worth it to work with a professional in this field. The strategies that we acquire over time on how these tests are constructed, and ways to help maximize your current abilities with what's being tested. It's really something you need to have some expert in the field walk you through, which is why test prep is just such an invaluable resource for students whenever possible, so that they can learn how to use these tips and tricks to get the best score possible.
And that's our goal, right? So tell us more. I mean, here we are, we're, very busy. In a nutshell, what are we doing as families? What are we doing? Give us 2 to 3 sentences on our key takeaways for today's.
So the key takeaways are that you want to have your student take a practice SAT and a practice ACT. That's going to give them their beginning starting point and let them know what they're scoring relative to their goals. Remember, every college is going to have a different threshold of level of student that they want to admit. So it's really important that students gauge where they are at relative to those goals. That's your starting point, right?
Starting point, practice test. And what year is that? What year are we doing that?
So I would say that's good around 10th grade.
Okay.
Probably a good place to start. Now, students aren't going to perform as well in 10th grade, obviously, as they will junior year. They don't have all of the math usually and the maturity that they will have in a year from then, but it definitely gives them a good idea of sort of where they are now. And if there's any deficiencies or any problems and they're just wildly away from the score that they need to get into their school of choice, better to know earlier and to work towards that goal more diligently earlier, so that they're able to accomplish. I think that should roll into taking standardized test courses either in the summer or junior year, leading up to junior year, or in junior year, where they can learn these key core strategies that make such a difference in just getting these points. And then beyond that, working into private tutoring if it's available, or working with some online resources that really help then kind of customize and go into the more specific areas of weaknesses that a student might have. That's the ideal plan. But the key is to start early, to keep it consistent, and to make sure that they know their goals and work towards them.
Well, Sara, thank you so much. I only wish I had this prior to my children being on their adventure. So we really appreciate your time today. And we look forward to more opportunities and learning more about your knowledge in the SAT, ACT world. And to those of you listening and watching, thank you guys so much for joining the Paved Blueprint. We look forward to seeing you at our next podcast and bringing you the most valuable information and current information for you and your family. Thank you so much. To help you with that crucial first step, Paved has put together a free side-by-side comparison guide of the digital SAT and ACT, including more details on how to access diagnostic tests.